My name is Cerenity Collins, and I'm a PhD student at the University of Georgia. And the title of my talk today, as you can see, is Pride, Shame, and Double Consciousness, an Affect Control Examination of DuBoisian Theory. W.E.B. Du Bois, in his book, The Souls of Black Folk, introduces a theory of double consciousness, which states that Black people in the United States must view themselves from multiple perspectives, from their own personal and cultural perspective, and from the perspective of the dominant white culture characterized by contempt for and ignorance about Black Americans. This double consciousness creates what Du Bois calls two-ness, which is the result of splitting oneself into two conflicting selves corresponding to the two cultural worlds. Du Bois describes this condition stating, "One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body." Given the importance of Du Bois's contributions for understanding the impacts of racialized social structures on the life outcomes of those at the bottom of racial hierarchies, I wanted to know whether I could find evidence of double consciousness in African Americans' emotional experiences. Affect control theory provides a way to operationalize and quantitatively measure the experiences of dual identities and the emotions that result from them. Drawing from Heise and Thomas's work, developing emotion predictions and testing gender differences in the processing of emotions, and Smith-Levin's work on multiple identities and mixed emotions, I conceptualize double consciousness as a state of almost perpetually enacting conflicting identities and experiencing mixed emotions. For the purposes of this exploration, I considered the likelihood of experiencing mixed emotions as an indicator of holding conflicting identities. To test racial differences in the experience of mixed emotions, I used the 1996 GSS emotion module and compared Black and white respondents' likelihood of experiencing emotions that were different from each other in EPA space. And those are the questions that they were asked. I represented each of the emotions in 3 dimensions of evaluation, potency, and activity, and first looked at the odds of experiencing emotions that were different from each other individually on evaluation, potency, or activity, and found no, as you see here on the first graph, there were no differences in the ways that people experienced emotions, conflicting emotions. And then I looked at the odds of experiencing specific discrete emotions that were far from each other in EPA space, as you'll see in the top chart. And so the emotions that I looked at were feeling proud versus feeling ashamed, and then feeling happy versus feeling the blues, and found that consistent with what we would expect, they were enacting conflicting identities and experiencing mixed emotions, that Black people in general, right, were more likely than white people to experience happiness and the blues on the same day, which was consistent with what we would expect. And also consistent with what we would have expected, Black men were most likely to experience pride and shame. However, Black women were least likely to experience pride and shame on the same day. And these results were driven by Black women's low likelihood of experiencing shame. These gender differences in how Black people experience mixed emotions may reflect racialized gender differences in double consciousness. Patricia Hill Collins, in her book, Black Feminist Thought, discusses the importance of Black women's standpoint discusses the importance of Black women's standpoint in Black women's resistance to oppression. She notes that while Black women learn and sometimes adopt the language of the dominant culture, that they can do this while also maintaining a self-defined personal standpoint that allows them to resist negative cultural images of them. So, in affect control theory terms, Black women may be better inculcated into the dominant culture while secretly maintaining and operating internally from a different culture that allows them to view situations differently and affects the way that they experience things emotionally. So bringing together affect control theory and theories of race may help us to better understand how people of color interact in white institutions. And my future directions will include an exploration of Smith-Levin's predictions about behavioral responses to mixed emotions as predictors of organizational commitment. Thank you.
Just succeeding with clarifying questions, right? Cool. So these people were asked on the same day what their emotional responses were. So basically the day that they took the survey was the day where all these questions were asked.
No. So the way that the survey works, they were asked how many days in the past 7 days have you experienced, and then each question is for each emotion. And what we did was we took the amount of times they reported that and then calculated the probability that they reported experiencing those emotions on the same day, and that's the measure that we used.